Hello all, and the very warmest of welcomes to the True Crime Enthusiast podcast, coming to you from my North Wales corner where I strive to seek out those less familiar and often forgotten tales of true crime from the darkest depths of the globe. Doing so is myself, Paul, the creator, host and true crime enthusiast of the show's title. My beloved one-eyed feline cinnamon, Peaksy, the true crime enthusiast cat, is here with me, of course. And completing me and Peaksy are yourselves, the wonderful enthusiasts that keep the show driving forward. It is as amazing as always having you join us today. My utmost thanks out for doing so. And I hope that as you have, it's for an episode that finds you and yours all good, all safe, and all well. For the tale I bring you this time around, we head to my own part of the country and to the North Wales seaside town of Prestatyn at the northern end of the Offa's Path and the eastern end of the North Wales Path. Couple of little stats: birthplace of Quick Save supermarkets, if anybody knows Quick Save, if they still even exist. Top farmer puncher John Prescott was born there, and where mathematics MILF Carol Vorderman honed her craft with numbers when she was brought up in the town. I take you back to October 2012 to recount to you the irreversible, horrific actions of an individual that shattered several families and destroyed several lives. Quite literally. The episode contains details and descriptions of crimes and events involving children that some listeners may find disturbing and or distressing, so please use discretion whilst listening in all. Bearing that in mind, please join the True Crime Enthusiast for an episode I've entitled Firestarter. We start with a recollection from Steve Allen, a father of 5, describing the early evening of the 19th of October 2012, when he dropped his 2 youngest children, then 4-year-old Bailey and his 2-year-old sister Sky, off for a sleepover at Steve's sister Leanna's flat, a second-floor flat located at number 34 Maes y Groes in the North Wales town of Prestatyn. It was something that the children did at least once a month and which all looked forward to. Leanna loved having her niece and nephew to stay, and Bailey and Sky loved being around at the home 20-year-old Leanna shared with her partner, 23-year-old Liam Timbrell, and the couple's 15-month-old son, Charlie. Steve recalled how excited the children were and how they waved frantically as he pulled up because they'd seen their Uncle Liam waving to them through the flat's kitchen window as he was in the process of making them a roast chicken dinner. They ran off into Leanna's house. They were really excited. They loved staying there. They stayed once a month. She called them her kidlets. I had to call them back for cuddles and loves before they ran in. And that was the last time I actually saw my children alive. It was only by pure luck that our oldest son, Kai, wasn't there too that night because he was invited to stay over at a friend's house at the last minute. It turned out that saved his life. Several hours later, Steve received a panicked telephone call from his father, Peter, who lived a few doors down from Leanna, which was to shatter his life completely. He continued. Around 10:10, I got a phone call from my dad while I was at work telling me the flat was on fire and to get back quick. I got there as fast as I could possibly get there. When I got there were flames bursting out of the front door. There were fire engines, there were people running around. It was horrendous. Liam was on the floor, quite badly burned. As Steve went to comfort him, people tending to Liam screamed not to touch him because of the severe burn injuries to his body. Steve continued. I think that's when I realised how serious it actually was, and I ran down the street shouting out, "My kids are in there!" I phoned Jonty, Steve's fiancée at the time, and told her to get to the hospital. I didn't want her seeing what I was seeing. I felt so helpless. I was shouting and screaming. For what seemed like hours, no one came out, and I knew that the longer Bailey and Sky were inside, the less chance there was of them getting out alive. I saw the firemen carry Sky out first and then Bailey, and I tried to run after them. The paramedics did their best and I was told not to get in their way, as if I was going to stop them helping my kids. I just wanted to let them know that I was there. As Sky and Bailey were taken to nearby Glenclwyd Hospital in Bodlewyddan, Steve followed, desperately hoping they could be saved. I don't remember actually driving there, I just remember getting there, parking up outside the front and all the ambulances being everywhere. It was just horrendous, the amount of people that were running around, that were shouting, that were screaming, pulling us back. Words don't explain really. I didn't want them to pass away. I wanted my kids back. But I knew they'd already gone. There was nothing I could do. It had been just before 10 p.m. that evening when Liam Timbrell had made a panicked 999 call in which he shouted to the dispatcher, "Help! Help! Someone has put it fire on purpose. We're inside the flat." He could then be heard to shout, "Oh my God! Oh my God! We're gonna die!" before the line went dead. At the same time, Leanna had made a call to her father, frantically telling him, "Dad, there's a fire downstairs. I can't get out." Peter had immediately rung Steve to tell him, and then set out the 100 yards or so, to be met with a scene of pure horror. By this time, neighbours and passers-by had sprung into action. Neighbour Joe Shelley made a 999 call when he heard a voice, which he believed at the time was that of a woman, saying, "We can't get out," and opened the flat door to see flames 2 to 3 feet high and the porch thick with smoke. He stumbled as he heard a whoosh sound and the already intense flames came towards him, pushing him back. In Mr. Shelley's 999 call, which was played to a court 6 months later, he was heard to say, "Please hurry, I don't think they'll be able to breathe much longer." In the background of the call, the frantic sounds of Liam Timbrell fruitlessly trying to smash the window from the inside with a vacuum cleaner, but in vain, could be heard. Peter Bailey, a neighbour, was watching television with his wife when hearing banging noises, he recalled later. "I went outside and saw that the front door of the house was well ablaze. There were loads of people in the street with black, acrid smoke pouring out of the house. The front door was a ring of fire with black smoke billowing out." Mr. Bailey ran around to the back of the house to see the occupants of the downstairs flat, 42-year-old Melanie Smith, stood outside in a sweater and knickers, and her partner Steve Clarkson climbing out through the rear ground floor window, yelling, "There's kids upstairs, get the kids!" Though Peter climbed onto a flat roof, then to the top of a ladder brought by a neighbour with the intention of getting inside the flat, as he put his hand to the window, he felt the intense heat coming from inside, and recalled sadly, "There was no way I could get in." As shocked neighbours gathered outside, the sound of sirens rapidly approaching, Melanie Smith was sat on the far side of the road with a blanket around her, brought for her by a neighbour. When Steve Clarkson asked her how many children were there, she replied, "How the fuck do I know? She has everyone up there." Mr. Clarkson then said to her, "Nobody is going to get out of that alive, Mel. Nobody." Firefighters on the scene, one of the first responders actually being the landlord of the property, Jay Liptrot, who led the rescue attempts as he knew the layout of the flats, used a ladder and an axe to break a window in the upstairs flat to effect entry and rescue first Liam Timbrell, who they found on the landing. They found Lee Anna and the children in a bedroom, rapidly removing each of them and handing care of them to the ambulance service. Sadly, though each were rushed to Ysbyty Glenclwyd in nearby Bodlewyddan, despite the best efforts of medical staff, It was too late for Bailey, Skye, and their aunt Leanna, who were each pronounced dead upon arrival. 2 days later, on the 21st of October, their 15-month-old cousin Charlie died from his injuries at Alderhay Children's Hospital in Liverpool. After he was rescued, plucked first from the blaze, a badly burned Liam pulled the oxygen mask off his face and in a faint voice said to paramedic John Owen, "Babies, are the babies okay? Tell me I'm worse than the kids." He then said that the electricity went off as he was at the window trying to call 999 and the family were plunged into darkness. He'd continued, "I heard a woman shouting in the street. Yes, I heard this woman shouting she was going to set fire to the house." He also told a neighbour this repeatedly, though this was interspersed with questions about the children, as well as a police community support officer who spoke to him, to which Liam said, "She was shouting through the letterbox, 'I'm going to burn your house down.'" Asked if he recognised the voice, Mr. Timbrell said, "Yes, it was Mel from the downstairs flat. It was Mel. She said, 'I'm going to burn the house down.'" Despite fighting hard, Liam died from his injuries nearly 3 weeks later on the 5th of November. His mother, Stephanie Watson, told later that whenever he could muster strength to from his intensive care bed, kept alive only with the aid of a ventilator and a kidney dialysis machine, all he could silently mouth to his mum were questions about the fate of his beloved partner Leanna and their 15-month-old son Charlie. Liam had had a tracheotomy surgery to help his breathing, which, though it left him unable to voice his question, his mum understood all too well what he was asking. However, tragically, Stephanie was under strict orders from doctors not to speak to Liam of their fate, as medics feared that he lacked the strength to survive the terrible truth. Stephanie spoke later of her heartbreak at not being able to respond truthfully to her son's agonised questions and how she had to cut Liam off before he probed any deeper and had a chance to also ask about Leanna. "I was very choked because I couldn't tell him the truth, but also I wanted to try and protect him from the truth. He asked me about Charlie, and I just said he knew I was no good at lip reading, and I was as thick as 2 short planks, and we just had to stick to yes and no questions. But every time I went in the room, he had a tear out of his left eye," recalled Stephanie. Stephanie, her partner Andrew Bell, Liam's father Leslie Timbrell, and his elder brother Andrew were all at his bedside during the final few days of his life. Stephanie, who just over 2 weeks earlier had witnessed her only grandchild Charlie's final moments at Liverpool's Alderhay Hospital, added, "We were then shown into the room, and I knew by looking at all the machinery and the readouts, or what readouts we could see, because they turned most of them off. And I knew why they'd turned them off. I just approached him and said, 'If you feel you need to be with them,' meaning Charlie and Leanna, 'I understand.' I gave him a kiss, and within a minute he was gone. It was a chance of a lifetime. So many people say, 'I wish I'd said this, I wish I'd told them that.' I had that chance to tell him how much I loved him, and he told us how much he loved us too." There are no words, are there? Stuff that nightmares are made of, that. Just after the family had been taken to hospital, Police Constable Melanie Smith, who has the same name, said later that she spoke to her namesake, having dealt with her previously, and asked if she had had any idea how it happened, though had not recorded this in her notebook at the time. It was in the form of a statement made later the following day. However, at 3:13 a.m, on the basis of Liam Timbrell's declaration, Police Constable Donna Rigby arrested Melanie Smith on suspicion of starting the fire, and then of the murders of Leanna, Bailey and Skye, who, when asked if she understood, just replied, "I haven't done anything." Asked later about her demeanour, PC Rigby said, "Very calm. She didn't say anything. She didn't show any emotion. She wasn't upset, wasn't crying or anything at all. I think the only thing she said was that she was shocked and she asked about getting her property from the flat." During a total of 4 police interviews over the following days, Smith denied any involvement. She told officers details of her movements the day of the fire, saying that she'd returned home after a lengthy drinking session and had shared a takeaway meal with her partner, Stephen Clarkson, before they'd retired to bed. Smith said that she could hear the television on upstairs and could also hear Liam and Leanna having sex. She went on, "One minute I was sitting in the lounge, and the next I saw smoke coming from underneath the flat door, so I went to the bedroom and woke up my flatmate, told him there was a fire, and we climbed out of the bedroom window. I hurt my arm while climbing." Asked if she knew what had started it, she replied, "Probably in the hall, but I don't know how, as there was only an old pushchair there." At one stage, Smith said, "I'm not an arsonist, and I am definitely not a murderer. I definitely did not start the fire in the flat. Give me a lie detector test. I'll pass everything." Following further inquiries, and after the evidence of witnesses, detectives asked her if she had started a fire to scare someone or out of frustration, but that it escalated beyond her wildest dreams. "No, I have 5 children of my own," Smith said. "On my kids' lives, I never did anything to that flat. That's from the bottom of my heart. I would not do that to my worst enemy." By Monday the 29th of October, 42-year-old Melanie Jane Smith had been charged with 4 counts of murder, 1 count of arson with intent to endanger life, and threats to commit criminal damage. Smith appeared at Mold Crown Court to answer these charges on the 31st of October 2012, with a 5th charge of murder being added to these following the death of Liam Timbrell on November the 5th. Smith pleaded not guilty to all charges and repeated this plea when she appeared by video link before Carnarvon Crown Court on Tuesday the 8th of January, where she was remanded in custody by presiding Mr. Justice Mervyn Hughes KC, ahead of a pre-trial hearing on March the 18th, 2013. A private funeral for each of the family members was held on Tuesday the 13th of November at Colwyn Bay Crematorium, whilst a public memorial service was held at Prestatyn Parish Church, Christchurch, on Wednesday the 14th of November. About 300 people attended this, and the church was decorated with many floral tributes, including one in the shape of a teddy bear, one in the shape of an angel, a blue car marked Charlie, and one for Hero Liam. There were framed photographs of the 5, as well as a montage of family snaps featuring colourful birthday cakes and children in wellies having fun, just the best of times, which adorned a stand near the pulpit, from where Sky and Bailey's father, Steve, gave a tribute on behalf of the family during the service and wore a football shirt with the names and ages of his 2 children on the back, saying, "It's hard to put into terms what it feels like for what we're all going through, and obviously the community are feeling it too. My kids, my sister, Charlie, my nephew, and the hero of them all, Liam. That night, he did what he could to save my family. For that, we will be grateful forever." As Steve finished speaking, the emotional congregation burst into a round of applause. Then the Mayor of Prestatyn and Melodon, Councillor Anton Sampson, took to the stand. He paid tribute to the dignity of the grieving families and the professionalism of the emergency services, and said that there were 171,000 words in the English language, but he'd struggled to find the right ones for his address. Then that morning, he had heard "All You Need Is Love" by the Beatles, and added, "That was the word I was searching for. The love from the community in recent weeks has acted at the very least as a mild anaesthetic from the pain we're all going through at the moment. The community is there for you if you need us. As the hour-long service drew to a close, many wept as pieces of music were played in remembrance of each victim. Don't Stop Believing by Journey for Leanna, a techno number for Bailey and Sky, The A-Team by Ed Sheeran for Charlie, and M People's Search for the Hero for Liam. A collection was also held with all monies being raised donated to Alderhay Children's Hospital, who had cared for Charlie in his final hours. It was to be the first of many tributes to the five. Several local businesses had donated funds to Childline and a selection of the family's choices of charity. Bodnant Community School, where Bailey and Sky had gone and where Charlie would have also attended, purchased a memorial bench as a tribute to the children and installed it at a spot in Barkby Avenue in Prestatyn, where the family had fond memories of happier times. And the Scala Cinema in Prestatyn, where Liam had formerly worked and where he was fondly remembered with the nickname Harry, as staff thought he looked like the character, showed the series of Harry Potter films in tribute to him. A permanent memorial to Liam was also installed in the Saronies Cafe Bar there, where he'd formerly worked. For a long time afterwards, floral and cuddly toy tributes were left at the scene on Maesa Grois, actions we've seen so often through cases covered on the show over the years. And on the first anniversary of the tragedy, hundreds of coloured balloons were sent floating upwards in memory of the 5 angels, members of the same family killed in the horrific fire, with each shade representing one of the lives lost in the blaze. There were black for Leanna, gold for Harry Potter fan Liam, and green for their 15-month-old son Charlie, who had loved Shrek. Leanna's niece Sky Allen and her nephew Bailey were remembered with pink and blue balloons respectively, while among the crowds there were people wearing clothes that reminded them of the 5, including Manchester United tops for fan Bailey and princess colours and nail varnish for Sky. Led by family members of the victims, scores of people shed silent tears as they set their balloons free, many inscribed with loving messages and tributes. So, what could have possibly occurred for a 42-year-old woman to have committed such pure carnage? The 3 most common threads that appear when researching the background and life of Melanie Smith are that she was commonly thought of as the black sheep of her respectable and well-liked family, and had long since burned bridges with at least 4 of her own 5 children, which I shall come on to later. That alcohol and a constant use of it was prevalent over everything to her, and that an often bandied around threat from Smith that much more than one person was to come forward and testify to having heard Smith vocalise was the threat to commit arson, specifically against people she had a grievance with. It went back a number of years too, as far back as 2007, when Smith was barred for a time from the Victoria Hotel in Prestatyn for being loud and argumentative, pissed in other words. In April 2008, by which time the ban had been lifted, but Smith and her boyfriend Stephen Clarkson were once again refused service at the pub by the landlady, for the same reasons, Smith's response was to say, "I'm gonna fucking torch this place," and storm out of the door in a temper. Now, the relationship between Stephen Clarkson and Smith was hardly idyllic, to say the least, and the couple were reportedly on and off like a light switch, the latest split being between late August and early September 2012, which is where another character comes into the tale, then 32-year-old Prestatyn resident Samantha Schofield. Samantha had quite a story to tell, and told later how only 3 years previously she'd counted Smith as a friend. when, along with her boyfriend Stephen Clarkson, Smith had become a regular at Samantha's then partner's pub. She went on. Back then, Melanie was a happy drunk. We all got on really well. She was close with my 2 kids too. I moved away for a year, and it was only once I'd got back that trouble started. Samantha had spent a year living in Cambridge, but following the breakdown of her relationship, had returned to Prestatyn in April 2012. Some weeks later, she was sitting with Stephen and her family in a local pub when Smith came in and began raging at her. Samantha continued. When she saw us together, she began to slap Steve in front of my 8-year-old son. Mel accused me of being in a relationship with him. Steve just sat there. She launched herself at me, but I pushed her off and the bar staff helped drag her away. She was so angry. Later, she asked me again about us having an affair, but I promised her it wasn't true and how I wouldn't do that to her. Over the following weeks, however, Samantha became convinced that Stephen was growing obsessed with her, saying, "He admitted that he fancied me and would beep his car horn at me in the street when I was picking up the children from school." One day, Mel approached me in the pub to ask me about my relationship with Steve again, and I told her it was nothing, but Mel didn't believe me. Not believing this, convinced that he had cheated on her with Samantha, Stephen's identical twin brother Gareth told a court later how a drunken Smith had given me some expletives about my brother, saying, "Your fucking brother, he's dead. He's been seeing that bitch around the corner." At the end of August 2012, Smith had kicked Stephen out of their home in Meiser, and in desperation, he came to Samantha and begged for her to let him stay. Samantha duly let the warehouse worker stay at her home for 3 nights, during which she admitted they became close, saying, "I felt sorry for him. I only put Steve up here because he said he was too old to go back to live with his mum and dad, and it would have been embarrassing. We did share a bed, but we were fully clothed. I don't deny getting close to him, but it wasn't a relationship, and it certainly wasn't an affair." On the 3rd night he was there, Samantha, Stephen, and her 2 children were sound asleep in their beds when a drunken, jealous Smith visited her home under the cover of darkness. Samantha went on. "When I left the house the next day, I noticed a mound of unlit matches strewn around my front gate, and Stephen's car had also been trashed. The windscreen wipers were bent, the wing mirrors were kicked out of position, and there was what looked like pink milkshake thrown at it, and there were matches strewn by his car. It was a chilling moment. It stopped me in my tracks, and from that moment I knew I wasn't safe. When Stephen saw it all, he said, 'It's her. I told you she was capable of that.' I told Stephen to leave as he'd put my kids in danger. He went back to Mel, and they were together again." Despite the evidence, Samantha chose not to go to the police about this. However, just days later, Smith went round to visit Samantha's sister Amy, who she also knew, and boasted that she was going to set fire to Samantha's house, admitting she had already tried to, but had been too drunk to ignite the matches. Amy tried to plead with her, reminding her of the children in the house, but she flatly replied, "I'm not finished with Sammy yet, and I can't make any promises." When Amy told me what she'd threatened, I thought, oh my God. However, Samantha didn't hear any more from Smith and assumed that she'd been making empty threats, saying, "I just didn't think she would have the stupidity to actually set fire to a house." Nearly 2 months passed before the killer blazed at Leanna's flat on October the 19th. As Samantha learned about what had happened on the news and that Smith had been arrested and charged with 5 counts of murder, her own lucky escape began to dawn on her. She continued, I'm lucky to be alive, and so are my kids. My heart went out to that poor family. On the night of the fire at Leanna's, she was telling people in the pub she had a box of matches and she'd set fire to my house. When the fire happened, I had about 8 phone calls from friends as they thought it was me who had been killed. The news at the time was just saying a mother and 2 children. It's so scary to contemplate. So, it demonstrated that Smith wasn't full of empty threats. But where do Leanna and Liam come into it? Around about the same time as Smith was fixated upon Samantha Schofield as a sworn enemy, she'd also begun to row with the occupants of the flat above hers, specifically Leanna Shears, because the young mother of one habitually left her son's pushchair in the downstairs communal hallway at the property where they both lived in flats. It was claimed later that she was particularly angry with Leanna being noisy in her flat and being untidy, such as leaving cigarette ends around the front door area. On the 1st of September 2012, Smith had told Leanna Shear's friend Stacey Brady that she was going to make Leanna's life hell, as Smith was ranting about her throwing cigarette butts outside the door, and had shouted up at Leanna, "I'm going to set your house on fire with you and your fucking kids in it." On September the 5th, Leanna's brother Michael called to see his sister, and she told him that when Smith was drunk, she'd made threats to burn her house down, saying, "She said, I've threatened to burn someone else's house down, and I'll do the fucking same to you." Smith also came to believe that as well as Samantha, her partner Stephen was in a relationship with Leanna. The manager of the Rills Vegas bar, Yvette Giblin, told later that on October the 13th, she'd heard Smith rowing with Clarkson in the bar, where she'd said in a raised voice, "You're shagging the woman upstairs. I'll burn the fucking house down with her and the kids in it." 5 days later, on October the 18th, Smith had told her friend Pamela Handley that she was going to torch or bomb her landlord's flat and that he wasn't going to get any more money from her rent. And on the following morning, October the 19th, the fatal day, Smith had gone to Chantel's hair salon in Prestatyn, where hairdresser Sophie Griffiths noticed that she smelled strongly of alcohol and was complaining about her flat, saying that it was too small and that she didn't like her neighbours or landlord, adding, "To be honest, I wish they'd burn it to the ground because the council would have to put me up then." Smith had then laughed and said no more. Just mere hours later, the resulting blaze not only destroyed her flat, but the entire property, and took the lives of the 5 people upstairs. Horror beyond belief. Circumstantial? The murder trial, which was to last 15 days and hear from 52 prosecution witnesses, began on the 10th of April 2013 at Mould Crown Court before presiding Mr. Justice Griffith Williams, and where Smith denied 5 counts of murder and making threats to burn another woman's home. Opening the case, prosecutor Ian Murphy Casey told the jury of 5 men and 7 women. The prosecution say the fire was deliberately started by the defendant who had been drinking heavily that day and who, over a period of about 2 months, leading up to October the 19th, had demonstrated anger and hostility towards Leanna and also jealousy of her. It is the prosecution case that on a number of occasions the defendant made threats to or about Leanna that she would see your house on fire with you and your kids in it. He also said that Smith appeared jealous of Leanna and had accused her partner of having a sexual relationship with her, which Mr. Murphy told jurors was an allegation for which there seemed to be no basis at all. On the night of the tragedy, he alleged that Smith had drunk 10 alcoholic drinks and had gone to a takeaway and ordered 3 starters, which she had planned to eat alone before this all-consuming jealousy finally spiraled out of control. Using a lighter, Smith had set fire to the pushchair in the hallway, leaving Leanna, Liam, and the 3 children trapped in their upstairs flat. While her helpless victims were plunged into darkness as the fire rapidly spread and destroyed the electricity meter cupboard, Smith simply made her escape through the back door. As 20-feet-high flames soon ravaged the property, Smith was sat on a curb with a blanket wrapped around her in just a top and knickers. Devoid of any emotion, as her partner Stephen had got up onto a flat roof at the rear of the property with others to try and help rescue the family inside. She was heard talking about insurance, about her father's furniture, even holidays. Jurors heard harrowing evidence during the course of the trial, pointedly the 999 call from victim Liam Timbrell at 10 p.m, which showed he was initially relatively calm, but within 1 minute and 15 seconds of the call, had realised that it was a fire which could cost them their lives, and desperately made efforts to get he and his family out. A second 999 call also played to the court was made by Joe Shelley, who could see someone trying without success to smash the window from the inside. Of this, Mr. Murphy said, "The noise of this can be heard on the call from Liam Timbrell. Joe Shelley became very upset because he could no longer see this person. Liam Timbrell is heard to shout, 'Oh my God, we're going to die.'" Mr. Murphy told the jury that the allegations by Liam that Smith had committed arson that had killed 4 family members and ultimately himself carried extra weight because of the extraordinary circumstances in which they were made, saying, "He was so emotionally overpowered by these tragic events that the possibility of him lying or distorting can be disregarded." Forensic fire investigation consultant Stephen Andrews said there was no evidence of an electrical fault or abnormal power supply at the flats, and that following extensive examination, he had ruled out flammable materials, liquid accelerants, or burning objects being put through the letterbox, or that it had been caused by smouldering smoking materials. Indeed, he believed the fire had been started by a naked flame being held against the pushchair or its contents in the communal hall on the ground floor, attacking the nearby electricity meter cupboard, cutting the power almost instantly, before spreading rapidly up the stairs and venting out of a roof skylight. Estimating the heat at somewhere between 170 degrees centigrade to 200 degrees, it was hot enough to have melted the casing of the television set from its stand a metre off the ground. Mr. Andrews said the fire had travelled quickly upwards, meaning the only way out would have been by breaking a window. He added, "In my opinion, this fire was started intentionally. The occupants would have been completely trapped with no opportunity to escape past the fire by the time it was detected on the first floor. It is a pretty horrible scene." Cross-examined by Stephen Riordan KC, defending, Mr. Andrews confirmed there were no fire doors at the property and no fire escape. Most of the rooms in the upstairs flat didn't have any doors, so there was nothing to stop the fire from spreading, the court was also told. Mr. Andrews added that Mr. Timbrell appeared to have attempted to break windows at the flat using a vacuum cleaner, but was unsuccessful. "You would be unable to escape from this flat without breaking a double-glazed unit," he told the jury. But this was very difficult. The court was told that the victims would not have been able to escape the first floor flat without breaking the windows because they had no bottom openings. Mr. Andrews, who's been involved in forensically examining over 1,000 fire-related cases, said he had attended the scene the day after the incident and had to excavate through debris, fallen plaster, and the remnants of the front door to reveal the pram. He had carried out several tests on similar flammable items that were stored beneath it and said he was unable to ignite baby wipes with a cigarette, but when a naked flame was used, they burned vigorously and for a long time. The jury were then shown a reconstruction video of Mr. Andrews setting fire to a similar Graco brand pram in a controlled test at a fire station, which had baby blankets draped from the handlebars like Leanna's did. The footage showed the fire quickly taking hold with flames reaching up to 5 feet high. The court was told there had been a lighter in the plastic tray near the top of the pram which belonged to Leanna, which was a possible source of the fire, though Mr. Andrews could not say it was the source of ignition, stating it was also possible it could have been in the pushchair simply because Leanna was a smoker. A lighter was also discovered in the pocket of a jacket left on the downstairs bedroom floor belonging to ground floor tenant Melanie Smith. Owner of the 3-story semi-detached house, Jay Liptrot, who at the time owned 12 properties in the Prestatyn area and who, as I said earlier, had actually attended the blaze as a first responder retained firefighter, told Mould Crown Court that a month before the fire, he had given Smith notice to leave the property. He described how, on the 1st of September 2012, Smith had telephoned and asked him to go to the house because of a big argument, as she claimed. Mr. Liptrot told the jury, "Mel said she wanted me to come round and sort it out. When I got there, she was standing on the front path and was drunk. She was shouting and being abusive to Leanna and a lady who was standing with her. I couldn't get the gist of what it was about because she was being so abusive. Leanna was quiet." He said he asked both women to return to their flats and then followed Smith into her property, continuing, "Mel was screaming and shouting at me. She kept repeating herself and she was very drunk, complaining about Leanna upstairs. I said this couldn't carry on and she had to go." He said Smith's initial response was, "You don't know who I am. I've been to prison." However, he said she then went on to say she wanted to leave anyway to, I quote, "get away from the woman who lives around the corner," before asking him for 2 months' notice so that she could inform the housing association. He added, "I then went upstairs to speak to Leanna. She was scared of Mel. She didn't like the confrontation and the arguments." Subsequently, Leanna had told him that her parents were interested in letting out the ground floor flat and had asked when Mel was leaving. On September the 25th, he told the court he'd received a text message from Leanna saying, "Well, she told me 21st and that she wants to burn her fella and kids. Ha." Mr. Liptrot also told the court how he bumped into Smith earlier on the 19th of October, the day of the fire. She had been agitated when she spoke about the mess in the porch, began ranting to him about cigarette butts being left in the porch area, and called Leanna a scruffy bitch for leaving dirty nappies and half-eaten fruit in the pushchair in the hallway. The court then heard from a steady stream of witnesses, some 21 in total, all of whom told that Smith had very vocally threatened to commit arson on several occasions. Michael Shears told how his sister had expressed her fears to him more than a month before the tragedy. He told the court his sister said the accused was a heavy drinker and would kick the door and complained about discarded cigarette ends and Charlie's buggy being left in the communal hall, saying, "Leanna said that she'd been threatened on numerous occasions, and on one occasion she'd threatened to burn her house down. She said that she had threatened to burn someone else's house down before, and she would do the same to her as well." Mr. Shears said that his sister had wanted to move, I quote, "because she feared for Charlie's safety." He continued that he'd won tickets to attend the Paralympics in London on the 9th of September, and that his sister was to lend him some money to be able to go. He said when they met at the bank, Leanna seemed wary and kept looking behind her, and then Smith appeared and began apologising to her, though he didn't know what she was apologising for. The defendant had then asked for a lift to the post office to get money for cigarettes, and Mr. Shears alleged that during that journey, Smith said her partner had been to see his ex-partner. She said that for that, she was going to burn him and his children in the house, he added. Samantha Schofield, who we heard Smith particularly hated, told the court that she'd been warned that Smith had threatened to burn her house down, and recounted the incident that I described before, when she had discovered, as Samantha told the court, 20 or 30 matches on the driveway and some more matches still in the box. Some were still live and others had been burned. I left the matches on the ground, but I picked up the box and put it in the bin. Samantha admitted that she hadn't seen who did it, but later that same day, her sister Amy said Smith had told her she planned to burn my house down. Asked by Stephen Riordan why she'd not reported the matter to police, Samantha said that she didn't think she was capable of it. Mr. Riordan suggested that Samantha hated Smith for accusing her of having a relationship with Stephen Clarkson, saying, "As soon as the fire happened and you knew the defendant had been arrested, you went to the police to make it worse for her." Samantha replied, "No, I thought, oh my God. I went to the police because I wanted to help." Stacey Brady told the court that she had actually threatened the defendant on the 1st of September, more than a month before the fire, saying Leanna was like a sister to her. When Ian Murphy asked Stacey if the threat had intended to be a warning to Smith, Stacey had replied, "I suppose it was. Leanna didn't like confrontation. People like Mel don't intimidate me. She intimidated Leanna, and I wanted her to know that Leanna had backup." Stacey described Smith hurling abuse at her before being pulled back into her flat by her partner. She then returned to Leanna's flat, but around 20 minutes later the door at the bottom of the stairs flew open and the defendant's partner, Steve Clarkson, shouted at her that she didn't know who he was and that she didn't know what would happen now. Stacey alleged that Smith had then shouted, "You think you're clever getting your sister? I'm going to set your house on fire with you and your fucking kids in it." Pamela Handley, at the time a regular customer at the Offarsdyke Public House in Prestatyn, told the jury of a conversation she had with Smith in a pub the day before the fire on October the 19th, in which the defendant told her that she and her partner were splitting up and that he was seeing another woman named Sam. Smith had told her that the landlord had also been harassing her for rent, and the defendant said she would torch or bomb the flat. "I told her there was a family living upstairs, but she just shrugged her shoulders," said Pamela, adding that Smith then put her hands to her head and said, "There's a voice in my head telling me to kill, kill, kill." She said, "Pam, I've done something bad, but I don't know if I should tell you." Then she said how she'd left a trail of matches from Sam's house and left the empty box on the bin. She said she'd gone there in her pyjamas and she'd had a few too many, Pamela explained. The pub's quizmaster, Robert Wynne Ellis, also told the court that Smith had also told him of attempts to set fire to Samantha Schofield's home, but that she had lost the matches. He told her that if she set fire to a house with children inside, they would throw away the key for her. She had told him she didn't care. However, he too told the court that he didn't think she was going to do it, or, I quote, he would have been the first on the telephone. Giving evidence herself at the start of the third week of her trial, Smith said she was alcohol dependent but didn't drink every day. Rather, she was a binge drinker, though wasn't in the middle of a binge when the fire took place, and had an appointment to see a psychiatric nurse scheduled for 3 days after the blaze. Smith said she had no previous criminal convictions, though she had been cautioned on one occasion for stabbing her partner with a fork when she said he rubbed crisps into her hair and she thought he was going for her. Smith described herself as a fantastic tenant, and even though the fire was 2 days before a notice on the flat was due to expire, she said, "I wasn't going anywhere. Jay wasn't in any rush to get me out. I wasn't even paying him any rent because of the state of the flat." Smith denied she'd ever made any threats to set fire to anything in her life, said the front door was never locked and anyone could have walked into the hallway and done it, and accused all of the witnesses of lying and making up stories about her, saying, "They are all in it together. Everyone wants justice, don't they? And they are looking at me, and I'm innocent. I've done nothing. I'd never ever burn anything or anyone ever." You've got to be pretty sick, crazy, and beyond evil to do something like that, don't you think? This isn't me. I'm not that kind of person. I always put other people before myself. There were sounds of disgust from the public gallery when she told the court. "From what I've heard in court, I'm distraught myself. God knows what the family are going through. That isn't me. I'm far from evil." She also denied previously shouting at Leanna in the street, allegedly saying she was going to burn her and the kids. Smith admitted there had been differences between the pair about the pushchair in the hall and rubbish that was left outside, but that they'd made up and apologised to each other. She said she couldn't comment on claims that Liam Timbrell had told emergency crews and others that she had started the fire, adding, "Someone has taken them away and I'm getting the blame for it." Mr. Murphy said that Liam Timbrell had heard Smith's easily recognisable voice, adding, "You told the jury that you heard Leanna making love upstairs. Is that what prompted you to go and set this fire?" "No, it was not." "I suggest to you that it was very easy for you to carry out this terrible, wicked deed of setting fire to the pushchair with a lighter." "That's crazy. You are twisting things," Smith replied. Mr. Murphy accused Smith of using her boyfriend Stephen Clarkson to establish a false alibi, saying that Smith got into bed with Clarkson after setting fire to the pram so she could then pretend to be a victim. "Once you started that fire, you then started your great big lie by suggesting you are an innocent victim," Mr. Murphy said. "That's wrong. It was deliberately started by you, and you in effect stage managed your exit from the property." "No chance," Smith replied. Mr. Murphy added, "After 6 weeks or more of threats to torch or burn their property with children inside, that's exactly what you did." Smith denied this, leading Mr. Murphy to add, "And you did so with deadly intent and to deadly effect." "No, that's not true. I'm not that kind of person," Smith replied. In his closing speech at Mould Crown Court, Ian Murphy said that it was quite an extraordinary thing for someone to go around threatening to burn someone's home, particularly when there were children inside. "It is even more extraordinary when that person is a 43-year-old woman with 5 children of her own," he said. "But there is compelling evidence that she is such a person. There is a simple and clear explanation for this fire, and that is that the defendant started it using her cigarette lighter. She had the opportunity and the motive. We say that she took that opportunity with deadly intent and to deadly effect. There is clear and compelling evidence on which you can conclude that she started this fire. This was an act driven by desire for revenge. It has all the ingredients of murder." Mr. Riordan said Smith was a woman of good character with no previous convictions and insisted there was no direct evidence at all before the court to show how the fire started. He told the jury that 21 witnesses in the case were all in what he called an incestuous group connected to Samantha Schofield, and alleged that they were giving the jury extensions of the same lie and turning gossip and tittle-tattle into their own version of events. Addressing the jury, he said. "I would urge you to find her not guilty. She is a woman of good character with no previous convictions. Despite her drinking and depression, she has never set a fire before. I suggest to you that she obviously loves children and young people and has brought up 5 children of her own. There is no direct evidence at all as to how this fire started. It's all circumstantial. She didn't put a light to the pushchair. There's no reason for her to do so. There's no reason for her to set fire to her own flat. Why do it when you are the absolute obvious suspect for it? If you've been going around the neighbourhood talking to anyone who will listen about setting things on fire. Does that make sense?" The jury of 7 women and 5 men deliberated for a painstaking 14 hours and 55 minutes before being told that majority verdicts would be accepted. And so, just 10 minutes later, on Tuesday the 30th of April 2013, they found Melanie Smith guilty of 5 counts of murder and 1 of threatening to destroy or damage property by fire by a 10-2 majority on each count. There were sobs and gasps of "yes" from the victims' relatives in the packed public gallery at Mould Crown Court as the verdicts were read out, and Smith appeared to collapse into the arms of a security guard and sobbed, "Oh my God, no," when the first verdict of murder was returned. As the remaining guilty verdicts were announced by the jury foreperson, she bowed her head and looked to the floor. Presiding Mr. Justice Williams told the court that he wanted time to reflect before passing sentence, but told Smith that she was to expect a life sentence as the punishment for murder was fixed by law, but that she would be brought back before the court on May the 8th when she would be told the minimum term she must serve before being considered for release. Smith clung to the arm of a security guard as she was led down to the cells and appeared to have difficulty walking as she was taken away to begin preparing for her life sentence. After the guilty verdicts, Miss Shear's parents, Joy and Peter, said they were overjoyed. Paying tribute to her family at the time, Mrs. Shears, who had attended every day of the trial, said, "I'm sorry for her family, but for me and my family, we're so happy that we've got justice. There's no reason for what happened, and we're never going to get a reason because she's still saying she's not done anything. She hasn't just taken Anna, Liam and the children, she's taken our way of life, our friends, our family. Anna was such a lovely, bubbly girl, and Liam a very caring dad. Both of them were heroes because we know they would have done everything to rescue the children. The 3 kiddies loved each other. They played together all the time. They were our angels. It's going to be very hard to fill the space that's been left in our hearts and in our lives. They should never let her out." Ahead of Smith's sentencing on May the 8th, a series of moving victim impact statements were read out in court from the victims' families. I bring just one of these here, that of Jonty Lewis, the mother of Bailey and Sky, who said in hers, "My heart has not just been broken, it's been torn apart. People ask if I'm okay, but I just lie. I can't put into words how I'm feeling. How do you put into words the pain of your children being murdered? How do you stop asking yourself questions? What if? When I wake up in the morning, that first minute is beautiful. In that 60 seconds, I feel no pain and I'm just listening for the laughter and footsteps running across the landing in the hope my bedroom door will fly open and they'll come in and jump on the bed so I can smother them in kisses. It's then that reality sets in. My heart is wrenched and the heavy empty feeling engulfs me. I realise that I will never hold my children's hands again, teach them to ride a bike, or any of the normal things a parent should be allowed to do. Christmas, birthdays, nothing will ever be the same. Not only have my children been murdered, but my family's future has been stolen from us. Yes, I've got memories, I've got pictures, but I want them here. I want them back to make new memories, to take new pictures, to kiss Bailey's cheeky cheeks and paint Sky's pretty little nails. If I'd have known the final time that I kissed my babies goodbye was the last time, I would have hugged them that little bit harder. My babies were loved. I just wish they were here for me to tell them. No words, eh? You cannot even imagine, can you? Smith's defense counsel said there were two mitigating circumstances: her previous good history and no previous convictions for involvement with fire. Her defense also said there was no compelling evidence that Smith was aware that Sky and Bailey Allen were in the flat the night of the fire. Smith wept as the sentence was passed by Mr. Justice Williams. There is a link to the sentencing remarks in full in the episode show notes, and they are somewhat lengthy, so extracts from which, to summarise, read: "The facts of this case are extraordinary and almost unique. At first blush, it seemed unlikely that a woman of your age, a mother of 5 children with no previous convictions, should even contemplate setting fire to a house, let alone a house with people in it. The setting fire to the pushchair was an act of exceptional wickedness, almost unparalleled in its consequences. For those who had to hear the evidence of the 999 calls, the horror of those moments in the flat upstairs as Leanna and Liam faced the awful inevitability of their imminent deaths will be forever etched on their memories. Understandably, the knowledge of the manner of their deaths has added to the overwhelming grief of their families, all the more to those who rushed to the house in the hope they could help. I have had regard to the contents of the 3 victim statements. Each witness wrote eloquently of the effects upon them and their families of their losses. That grief will not have been mitigated by any meaningful remorse on your part. You continue to portray yourself as a victim, blinding yourself to the sufferings of the real victims in this case, and failing to at least acknowledge that it was your deliberate act which started the fire. I agree with the submissions of Mr. Murphy and Mr. Riordan that the appropriate starting point is one of 30 years. While there is some mitigation from your previous good character and the fact these were not premeditated offences, this is balanced by the number who were murdered by you. The sentence for each of the counts of murder is life imprisonment with a minimum term of 30 years, less the days you have spent on remand in custody." Smith was then taken down to begin her sentence. Melanie Smith will be 73 years old in 2043 before ever being considered for release, should she of course live that long. Following sentencing, Leanna's father Peter said, "I got a phone call that night from my daughter Leanna in the flat saying there was a fire. I couldn't do anything to save her. We just stood there outside screaming. I tried to get in there, but neighbours held me back from the flames. Smith actually tried to stop me getting inside. A neighbour put a blanket around her and she started talking to her about going on her holidays. She is evil in the extreme. My family can't even say her name. We call her It." Samantha Schofield, meanwhile, told the media, "I thought Mel was full of empty threats, but she wasn't. She drinks all day. You hardly ever saw her sober, but when she was Mel, she could be lovely. She's become something she's not, evil. Mel has got a very long time to think about what she's done. She'll be 73 by the time she gets out. The night she almost sent my house up in flames, I was asleep in bed along with my 2 kids. I feel so lucky when I think how it could have been me." Samantha also added how she had since taken out a harassment order against Stephen Clarkson to stop him pursuing her and to ban him from approaching her. I don't know whether they had a relationship or not. I shall let you make up your own minds about that. Smith's own family members, who had disowned her and who had sat in support of the victims' families throughout the trial, also issued a moving statement expressing their complete sorrow and support for the families of those who died. They also asked for their privacy and have never spoken to the media about Smith's actions. But her own children, at least 3 of them, and her ex-husband have. They branded her Britain's most evil woman. Paul Smith had married 17-year-old Melanie Tittle in August 1987, 2 years after they met at Pontins near Prestatyn, where she worked as a chambermaid, and she gave birth to their 3 children, Lisa, Charlotte and Jonathan, within the next 4 years. But Paul told the Sunday Mirror newspaper that he immediately noticed she lacked any maternal instinct, resented being tied down to 3 young children, and regularly mistreated them. As she began to drink more and more, Paul began to notice marks on the children, but which Melanie always had an excuse for. The children later alleged that Smith routinely burned them with cigarettes, poured boiling water over them, and locked them in a tiny understairs cupboard for punishment if they cried. She also chopped off their hair if they made too much noise. The final straw came for Paul when he discovered her in bed with another man while their 3 children were locked in another room. The couple duly divorced, and Melanie won custody of the children, then aged 3, 2 and 9 months old, but put them in voluntary foster care only a day later because she claimed she couldn't cope. Paul won custody of them back, and then their ordeal ended. He told the newspaper, "When I picked the kids up from the foster home that day, I vowed that Melanie would never hurt them again. None of us ever saw or spoke to her again. She's never sent one birthday or Christmas card, and there's never been a single letter. She destroyed my family years ago, and by setting fire to that house, she's ruined the lives of so many other people. The sentence is totally deserved, and none of us ever want to see her again. She was an appalling mother to her own children, and now she's done this to these other kids. It's horrific. That evil woman deserves to rot in hell. Her cruelty has finally got her what she deserves. We just feel so sad for the victims and their families." Her daughter Charlotte said she was shocked by the murders, but added they were not out of character for her mother. She told the Sunday Mirror, "She was cruel to us as kids, so why shouldn't she be cruel to other kids years later? She was a mother from hell to me, and she still is. Spending the rest of her life in prison won't come close to what she deserves. We all wish she was dead. Knowing that the evil woman who killed that poor family is our mother is almost impossible to bear. Dad rescued us from hell. He's brought us all up without her, but now she's back in our lives in the most horrific way imaginable. She's been dead to us since we were tiny. Now, I just want her to rot in hell." Smith reportedly has 2 other children from another relationship, and at least one of the other 2 had also reportedly disowned her following her horrific crime. In November 2015, Jay Liptrot was jailed after pleading guilty at Carnarvon Crown Court to failing to take proper safety precautions to prevent the 5 deaths. During the opening of the case on the first day, the jury, made up of 10 women and 2 men, heard that a basic fire door costing £250 would have meant it would have taken 30 minutes before the blaze swept through the upstairs flat. Instead, there was a woefully inadequate, as was described, door made of glass and thin wood which failed to act as a barrier between the communal hallway and the stairs. Liptrot initially faced 5 manslaughter charges, which he denied, but on the second day of his trial, he admitted the lesser indictment. It came after lengthy discussions between defence and prosecution barriers and relatives of the victims who collectively agreed to this 6th lesser charge. And I must say here that all of the relatives of the victims and the family, They were all actually quite supportive, saying how much of a good guy he was and a good landlord. The manslaughter charges were dropped and he pleaded guilty to the lesser charge, accepting that his failings to take fire precautions, despite being a long-standing landlord and having been trained in conducting home fire safety checks as a firefighter, had exposed his tenants to the risk of death or serious injury in the event of a fire, and despite having a portfolio of 11 properties in the Prestatyn area and classing landlord as his main occupation, had failed to ensure the property was safe. Gordon Cole Casey, mitigating for him, said, "He will never ever forget the events of that night. It is something he has to live with day in and day out. It's lived with him every day since. He is now taking medication for depression and anxiety, and all the remaining properties in his portfolio have now been brought up to standard regarding fire safety regulations." He asked the judge to consider a suspended sentence, but presiding Mrs. Justice McGowan told Liptrell one of the most poignant pieces of evidence, as she described, was the finding of palm prints left as trapped Liam Timbrell tried desperately in vain to break a double-glazed window to escape. The judge told Liptrot, "You didn't cause the fire, but the lack of a fire door meant the tenants didn't have 30 minutes protection from the spread of the fire, which would have been long enough for the fire brigade to arrive and start the rescue." Liptrot, who was sentenced to 15 months in prison, had been a firefighter for 15 years, but of course lost his job as a result. The court also ordered him to pay £4,299 prosecution costs, plus a £100 victim surcharge. The property remained for many years with its windows and doors boarded up, and even pigeons roosting inside the wreckage. There have been calls over the years for it to be demolished, but like so many other properties where extreme tragedy happens and the buildings are razed to the ground, for example 25 Cromwell Street, number 32A and B can't because it supports the neighbouring property. It remains boarded up to this day, though a friend of mine who lives in the Prestatyn area told me on good authority that there are firm plans in place to restore it to a dwelling. Family members of those who lost their lives still live in the Prestatyn area, despite the many painful reminders they face each day, unable to move away because of how many happy memories the town ultimately holds for them. And Steve and Jonty went on to have 3 more children, Tristan Bailey, Summer Sky, and Junior, who though each were born after the tragedy, and despite never having met their older siblings, know all about them from their mum and dad's stories and pictures that they treasure of their lost children. Over a decade after the fire, Steve told North Wales Live, "When you lose a loved one, people tell you time is a great healer, but the truth is that pain will never go away. People used to say that to us a lot, but time doesn't heal you, it just teaches you to deal with it better. There's little things we do that are silly, but that's how we cope. Everyone deals with things differently, but for us, having pictures and those reminders of those happy memories helps us cope. Even though it's been 10 years, it doesn't feel like that. It feels like yesterday." I'm sure that it always will. It must do. What do you think then about the actions of Melanie Smith, a monstrous crime committed when a series of circumstances, depression, stress and anger reacted undoubtedly with the alcohol she had had that day and came to a head, and she impulsively committed an act that not only irreparably ruined her own life, but cost the lives of 5 others also. The common picture that emerges is of an argumentative drunk who chose alcohol over her family, always flitting off to the pub, where she would always drink herself into a stupor and then wouldn't remember anything the next day, and one who would chuck threats of arson around often threatening to burn things to get revenge on those who aggrieved her, until she finally went and did it with horrific consequences. I would love, as always, hearing your thoughts and feedback on the tale I've brought you in Firestarter, which you can do so in the episode thread up in the show's Facebook discussion group, or through any of the show social media links. Wherever you wish to is good by me if you want to get in touch. All that remains for me to say then is that I thank you for joining me and Peaksy today, and that I've been, I still am, and hopefully still will be Paul, the true crime enthusiast, wishing you all good and safe times, and I shall speak to you very soon. Take care all, stay safe, and goodbye for now.